This review, 9 months in the making. It was one of the first things the Labour government set in train was reform of the water sector. Today we get publication led by Sir John Kiff, a former Deputy Governor of the Bank of England, so no stranger to thorny issues. John, in your speech, we're in the London River and Steam Museum. This has a place in London's water history. You compared what you've had to look at as our great stink moment. Just tell people what that means.
Well, back in 1858, the Thames had become an open sewer. London's infrastructure hadn't kept up with population and economic development growth. And then, hot, dry summer, the Thames just became, in the words of politicians, pestilential and the like. And it got to the point where Parliament was disabled by it. They could not operate. The stench was so great. And the newspapers called it the Great Stink of 1858. And I mentioned it because, look, we're much better off today. We've got a drinking water and sanitation unimaginable all those years ago. But when it happened in 1858, that's what launched the huge building of sewers and water mains in London. It took a long time to build that infrastructure, but the health of London was transformed and its environment was transformed. And in some ways what we see is similar at the moment. We have an infrastructure that is not coping with the demands we're putting on it. We have problems that keep happening. We have lots of debates and arguments about what's the right system, etc. And I think, and certainly the public anger about pollution in particular, we've reached a moment like that as well. And I think that's what the government had in mind when it said it wanted a reset. So I compared it. It's different, of course, but I hope this is a reset moment, and I hope our report will contribute to that.
So it's a metaphorical stink at the very least. Your central recommendation, replacing the regulator, is the regulator here, which has been trying to manage this industry, carrying the can?
So first of all, that's one of our recommendations. We have, look, we came to the conclusion that there was no one thing you could fix, no matter how radical you were, that would suddenly transform the system overnight. You have to deal with a number of things. A lot of the responsibility lies with government. I think government for not setting direction, government for willing the ends without the means, and the like, and the government for not taking the decisions that would have allowed the regulators to balance their responsibilities. A lot of the responsibilities with companies. Some companies over past decades have acted, I said in the speech, have acted in line with their private interest, but not in line with the public interest. The question is, in a system of regulated private monopolies, how do you ensure that those companies align with the public interest? And regulation is how one does that. And it has worked in the past in the water industry, but it needs to be reformed and to work again.
How do you hold them to account? Because the government ruled out nationalisation, which many people think is the answer here, so you couldn't consider that. So how do you regulate companies that have shown that they have been happy to take money out of the system while not investing in its future?
So the first thing I'd say is I'm quite old, and I can remember life before privatisation, when the UK was the dirty man of Europe because we couldn't invest in our water systems and when leakage was high. So it's not, to me, axiomatic, inevitable that the problems we face are the problems of privatisation. I think they're problems of failures in the system. Companies can be held to account. A lot of the powers that Ofwat now has will do that. They just haven't had the powers for a long time. And over the period we're talking about, remember, some of the problems we're seeing in companies didn't happen overnight. I mean, these are deep-rooted problems, and the seeds of over-leverage and damage to financial resilience were sown quite a few years ago at a time the regulator was being encouraged to be light touch, to be outcomes-focused, not to check, and the regulator didn't have the powers, and the space opened up, I think, for what we've seen.
And one more, if I may. Bills, actually, in real terms, have stayed pretty low through that previous regime. You said this morning, and others agree, bills are going to rise. But you've also talked about the need to give investors a return. And the market has changed in the last few years. Raising money is more expensive. Do the public have to accept that this investment is going to come at a price, and some of that price will go to investors, to the very companies with whom they're so angry.
So infrastructure has to be paid for, and ultimately it's paid for by the bill payers and the like. But we want to finance it so that we spread those costs over time. If you're building for 60 years, you don't really want to charge people over the next 5 years for that. So we need to spread it over time. And there are risks in running a water company. Yes, it's a regulated monopoly, but yes, things can go wrong, and capital has to bear that risk. So I think when companies are delivering what they're set up to do, when the private interests of the shareholders are lined up with the public interests in producing water, sanitation, respecting the environment, those returns will come out. And whether it's publicly owned or privately owned, there will need to be borrowing to finance this, and borrowing costs go up. But that is part of, it's like your mortgage. You're spreading the cost of something that you hope to enjoy for a long time over a long period. And those costs will have to be paid.
Hence the focus on the regulators. John Kiff, thank you very much for joining us here on Sky News. We will be joined at any moment now. So John's going to step out, and David Henderson, who's Chief Executive of Water UK, who speaks for the industry about which Sir John has been speaking, is going to join us. Just letting him step in now. He's been listening to Sir John. David, if you could step in here. Good morning.
Good morning.
Henderson, Water UK. You represent the companies with whom so many people have lost patience, to put it politely. What's your reaction to what you've heard from Sir John?
I think people have lost patience with the whole system. Anybody who looks at it can see that it's not working. It's completely broken down. And today I think we have a really, really excellent opportunity to make radical reforms that are needed to give us the environment that we need and the economy that we need too, because water is increasingly important for economic growth as it is for the quality of our environment.
We've spoken before. You've been very frustrated as an industry with the regulator, with Ofwat, with the long process about setting prices and how you're managed. You must be pleased, your members must be pleased that the regulator appears to be paying the price here.
Well, we've had a series of recommendations that I think are going to give us the shake-up that's required. Our system is too slow, it's too expensive, and it's far, far too complicated. So I think I'm very pleased the government has accepted the recommendation to abolish Ofwat and have one single regulator so that we can have decisions about what sort of environment we need and what investment we need all taken in the one place. And that should make a really big difference so that we can get investment faster. And overall, this should actually put less pressure on bills. Because we've had a complicated system of regulators that often disagree with each other, that take their time arguing, it's delayed necessary investment, which ultimately has meant it's cost more than it should have. And that is one of the reasons why we've not built a reservoir in more than 30 years.
Sir John talked about private companies acting in private interest, not acting in the public interest. Do your members, and we kind of know the companies he's talking about, I'll make it easier for you to answer by not naming them, do some of them accept, do you accept that the industry has not acted in the public interest all the time?
We've been very open about the failings of the industry in the past. Some companies have behaved poorly, and we've apologised for that, and we've put a plan to put things right. But we can only invest what we're allowed to by the regulator. And for too long, as we've talked about in the past, Ofwat has denied vital investment. So these reforms are a crucial part to ensure that the whole system, companies and regulators, can work together to give people the investment that they need so that we can end sewage flowing into our rivers and seas, so we can build more houses, allow businesses to expand, especially those that use data centres that use a lot of water. And I think these reforms mark a major moment for our whole country so that we can get the sort of system that we need.
People who might be watching this, they'll be concerned about the state of rivers. They'll be concerned about the money that has flowed out of private companies to shareholders and to investors in dividends and executive pay, and they will be thinking, hang on, the regulator is the one that pays the price here. How do you convince them that they should be paying yet more money and watching bills rise so your investors can get a better return?
Well, it's our estimate that the complexity of the regulatory system right now is adding £27 to every single family's bill on their water bill, and that is far too much. We need a simpler system that is cheaper. Now, Sir John Kiff has looked in detail at whether there is a difference in performance between privately owned companies and state-owned companies, and he has concluded there is no link. I represent companies in Northern Ireland, Scotland, Wales and England, and you have different models, publicly owned, state-run, mutual and private, and the performance across the whole of the country is broadly comparable because the challenges are the same. You look across France and Germany, they have many, many more overflows of sewage than we do, and that's because across the Western world we have not been investing enough. And with the pressures of climate change, population growth and business needs for water changing, it's crucial that we invest, invest now.
David, I will let you clear your throat. Thank you very much for making time for us this morning. So there you go. Darren, we've heard from the industry that's now facing different, potentially more intrusive regulation. They believe they can deliver. As bill payers, as users of rivers, we'll have to make up our own mind in due course.
OK, Paul, as always, thank you very much indeed. Paul Kelso there at the London Museum of Water and Steam. Let's bring in John Phillips, Chief Executive of Global Infrastructure Investor Association, who is in central London. John, very good morning to you. Just give us a sense of how bad things are out there in terms of our water infrastructure. We keep getting told, don't we, that we've got Victorian infrastructure, pipes dating back 150 years or whatever. Is that really the case? Is that genuinely widespread?
Well, I think you just heard from David Henderson from Water UK. This characterised, I think, the state of the challenge facing the industry right now. And absolutely, much of the core infrastructure dates back for many, many decades. And in some cases, yes, back to the Victorians. So there is a huge challenge facing the industry. There's no doubt about it. But I think, I speak on behalf of investors, international investors, and about 30 of my members have got a stake in a UK water company. And I can tell you from the conversations we have with many of them that they've lost confidence. They had lost confidence in the UK's water sector and its regulation. And that was in danger of spilling over into wider sort of concerns about the investment opportunity in the UK, full stop. So, because water in the UK is meant to be one of the lower risk opportunities for investors. So that's not where it is right now. And that's why we've been calling for a reset, and that looks like what we've got.
Well, I was going to say, I mean, do you think this goes far enough? I mean, is this report, the recommendations, the government say they're going to fast track some of them, enough to attract back those investors again?
Well, I think I have to give credit to Steve Reed and some of his cabinet colleagues, because I think investment sentiment is impacted by a number of things. So it was very important that the government sent a signal early to investors that they were going to take a really hard look at water because of the problems that was creating. But I think they've also come forward with some ambitious changes to the planning regime. They've also published a 10-year infrastructure strategy, which is something else that we've been encouraging them to do. So when you kind of build a picture across, the wider kind of brief, the government put private investment at the heart of its growth agenda. And that's a fine aspiration to have, but it needs to be backed up with clear policy. Sending a signal to international investors that can take a decision on where to deploy their capital anywhere around the world in any kind of sectors. So, I think it's a step forward without doubt today. What we now want to do is to ensure that the government acts with pace to put in place the new arrangements in the shortest possible timescale.
John, I mean, this is going to cost a lot of money, north of £100 billion we're talking about, but I'm just about to talk about HS2, which is a reminder that British infrastructure is always way more expensive than we think it is going to be, and always more troublesome. In essence, I suppose my question is, do we have any guarantees that even with the political initiative, this actually can be done, that we can sort this problem out?
Well, as you say, 100 billion of infrastructure investment in water alone in the next 5 years is certainly a challenge, and there will be delivery challenges. There's no doubt about that. Does the country have the right skills in the construction workforce and other such things? But I think it's an ambition that needs to be addressed, and I think it can be with the right enabling environment that the government and the new regulatory arrangement are there to help deliver.
John, we appreciate your time this morning. Thank you very much indeed, John Phillips there. Thank you.
Thank you.
OK, you're watching Business Live on this Monday morning. Up next, we're talking, as I said, about HS2 as manufacturers call for the revival of the original plan. We'll be speaking to them next.
I'm Stephen Murphy and I'm Sky's Ireland correspondent based here in Dublin. The waters of Ireland and Britain should be home to great white sharks. If there are great white sharks in this area, there's no reason they wouldn't come here to feed. It's basically a buffet on a beach. This could be not only a record-breaking storm, but potentially the most dangerous storm ever to hit Ireland.
I just took a shower above the clouds. You know why? Because this is the Emirates A380. Flying Emirates, fly better. Thank you.
Very welcome back to Business Live. Just going to bring you up to date with a little bit of breaking news in the last couple of minutes. We're going to take it to Dhaka in Bangladesh, where at least 16 people have been killed as a Bangladeshi Air Force training aircraft crashed into a school and college campus in the capital a little earlier on today. As I say, at least 16 people have died in that Air Force plane crash. We'll have more details at midday with Matt. Now, a group of manufacturers are calling for the original route of HS2 to Leeds and Manchester to be resurrected. A survey conducted by Make UK and Barclays, UK corporate bank, suggests almost 9 in 10 companies believe the original high-speed rail link should still go ahead. Well, delighted to say we can speak to Ben Fletcher, who is the Chief Operating Officer of Make UK and joins us now live. Ben, what are you guys proposing this morning?
Morning, Darren, and thanks very much for the chance to talk about it. We are very keen to bring the original plan for HS2 back to the forefront of the debate. We understand that there have been some real issues and some real challenges, but as the project gets a serious look at, we need a big investment in infrastructure for many reasons. There's a great economic benefit of linking those fantastic cities up, but at its core for us, what we've always been keen to get out of high-speed rail is a massive expansion in capacity so that we can move much more freight onto the line. We can move passenger traffic from the traditional line to the high-speed line, and that frees up an enormous opportunity to put a lot more freight onto the older lines. We can move the product between the big cities, and what we want to do is to really invest in things like digital technology so that firms can book onto those spaces much more easily, and logistics hotels so that we can bring together all the different modes of transport in some of those really big hubs around the spine of the country, so we can make it much easier to put manufactured goods on the backs of trains, get them around the country, and then get them onto HGVs, get them onto planes, get them onto other forms of transport.
But the problem here, Ben, is we haven't got money. I mean, HS2 is already going to cost at least 100 billion quid, and that's only to get to Birmingham. I mean, we can't afford it, can we?
Well, I think there's two things really, Darren. One's really important. First of all is that the government is looking at reviewing the planning infrastructure and the planning challenges. And I think one of the reasons why these projects cost such a ridiculous amount of money in the UK is because of the complexity of getting them done. There are projects around Europe that can move forward at a third of the time at a much lower cost. So that review of the way in which we do planning and the way in which that brings cost onto the scheme is really, really important. The other issue is, you can listen to lots of people who are involved in decisions over the last few years where we haven't spent on infrastructure. You've just done a big piece on water, and rail is in a very similar boat. We haven't invested in road and rail and other big transport sectors for a long time, and we're paying the price of that. And now some people involved in those decisions 10 years ago regret the fact that when money was cheap, they didn't invest. If we don't make some of these decisions now, the situation in another 10 years is going to be even worse. And I think that's why we do have some tough decisions to make. But one of the great benefits of these investments is that they're not just about the one-off cost. Okay. They deliver economic growth, and that's the thing that the country needs most desperately.
And Ben, just very finally on this, I mean, do you honestly think the government's going to listen to this? I mean, we've seen them change their mind quite a lot recently.
I think what we've had from this government, and this has been really important in the last few years, both the previous government and the new government have really understood post-COVID the importance of domestic manufacturing. The new government have put their money where their mouth is by launching an industrial strategy. We've been delighted about that. And what we're saying is if you want to get the best out of that investment and to grow domestic manufacturing, creating amazing jobs around the country, delivering economic growth, We need to create the spine on which to build, and a better transport infrastructure is at the heart of that.
OK, Ben, always a pleasure. Thank you very much indeed, Ben Fletcher there from
Thanks, Darren.
UK. Thank you. OK, that is it for me on Business Live. We're back at 4:30 this afternoon. The rest of the day's news is coming up at midday. See you later.